Okay, here's tonight's agenda. And as you can see, I've got it packed with all kinds of things. So we're going to update you on the Turkey and Syria Disaster Response Fund, Ukraine, Pakistan, and then a few comments about the general disaster response fund. And then they're starting last fall, several of your districts were involved in what I termed a coalition. So I'll update you on a still open grant that we have in Ukraine there. I will repeat myself sharing a global grant project that's available in Ukraine, talk about a podcast opportunity that's being started up in Ukraine. And then I really want to get through that agenda so that we have some time to discuss, what other projects your districts are involved in. And then, how can we, looking forward, be proactive on how we can support anybody during times of disaster. So that's my plan for us for the rest of the evening. So quickly reviewing, just to make sure we're all on the same page, talking about these disaster response grants. We have the general fund, Rotary's General Disaster Response Fund that the trustees started several years ago, in response to Rotarians' desire when there is a disaster, natural disaster somewhere in the world, that we can send funds there. Fund is already set up to receive those donations. That is ongoing. As you are aware, they started at the end of January, another special Ukraine Disaster Response Fund that will accept donations until the end of this calendar year. And then projects can be done through that funding, if it's available, through June, the end of June in 2024. Same thing for Pakistan. So the general fund, special Ukrainian, special Pakistan fund. Right? Let's talk some more about that general disaster fund, which is available for disasters anywhere in the world. As of last week, there was about $500,000 in that fund. And from that, the trustees carved out 125 specifically for Turkey. And that between that announcement last week and through the end of March of this year, any money that goes into the General Disaster Response Fund will be available for Turkey. As far as the Turkish response, this kind of goes back to the standard policies and procedures for disaster response grants. Only the districts in Turkey can apply for those funds. So the three districts in Turkey in $25,000 increments can do disaster response grants there. The fourth district, 2452, that I have starred here, that is a multi-country district. There's about 8 countries in there. That one is included in this because that's where all the refugees are going. And so that district has access to the money earmarked for the Turkey earthquake and the Syrian earthquake there, because they are receiving the disaster response funds and to support the refugees. Bottom line is, none of the rest of us can do projects there. It's just those 4 districts. As far as Syria, the situation there, of course, it's been terrible with the civil war for a long, long time. There are no Rotary clubs in that country. The challenges with the civil war between the rebels and the sitting government make this very difficult to provide any aid there. I will tell you that Shelterbox has prepared, and they are mounting a relief work there. So if you're really interested in that, I have quite a long memo from Shelterbox and what they are doing in the country. Put your name into the chat box and I will make sure that you get that memo with that updated information. The NGOs there, primarily the White Hats and the Red Crescent, or what is going on there. Bottom line is, Syria is very, very iffy and unstructured. So if you or your clubs want to do anything there, I would really reach out to the appropriate people at Rotary to help give you direction there. Now let's talk about the special Ukrainian response fund that the trustees reopened at the end of January for new donations. Up to this point, there's been about 140,000 in new donations and DDF to that account for Ukraine. During that same period, there's been 1.1 million in requests through the disaster response application process. So there's, at this point, the balance is 119,000 in that. It was actually one of ours, Jim's on the call, 5,400, that got the first $25,000 new money from the Ukraine Disaster Response Fund. They have a grant in progress. So the balance is around 119,000. Project number 2 that's in the queue is 175,000. So until more money comes in to fund that 175, that's where that is sitting. And then they, in order received, they will just work through that as more money comes in. So at this point, it's really out of balance. As far as Pakistan, the donations sit around $2,000 right now. And I really don't have any more to say about that until we get some more money in there. So I'm going to pause right there with questions. Shirley, do we have any questions in the chat box?
We do not have any questions in the chat box.
Okay, perfect.
If anyone has one, go ahead.
Yeah, if anybody has one, unmute yourself and ask, because I want to make sure that you've got, firm handle on what your opportunities are for your clubs and your Rotarians in any of these areas.
I may be partially going to sleep here, but on the Turkey, the special disaster fund for Turkey, the date was March 31st that the monies automatically are going in there. Is that overlapping with the Ukraine disaster fund?
Right.
Do you have to just make sure you identify which fund you want it to go into?
Anita, that's a great question. You must identify which fund it's going to go into. And in fact, I apologize. I was going to go when you go to the Rotary homepage up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a donate button there, and that's where you should be able to specify. And the staff is trying to keep up with these decisions that the trustees are making. And so they're a little bit behind. That's why the numbers aren't quite accurate on the money, because they're not quite, caught up with posting money either. So those dollars are from last week, but you are right. These are not commingled funds. They are distinct for each of those, and a donor must signify that.
Okay.
Leanne, Sam is asking, was all the 15 million spent in Ukraine?
Yes. So backing up to February 24th, the war in Ukraine started, and immediately Rotarians around the world started responding and donated $15 million. That money was spent about mid-November of last year through the disaster response grant program that was set up for Ukraine. And the distinction there was that a district anywhere in the world could put together a project in Ukraine to support them. Where with Turkey, we cannot do that. It's only the 3 districts in Turkey that comprise Turkey that can do that with these funds. Okay. Any other questions?
I've got one, Leanne.
Sure, Howard, go ahead.
We have a club that was actually working on a traditional global grant with a Polish club to see what, to do that for the refugees and things like Poland. And that's moving along, although slow, as you might imagine. Their thought was to switch now that the Ukraine disaster thing is now applying for it, but it doesn't sound like there's a huge pending amount of money sitting there ready to grab.
No, there is not. You're absolutely right. And remember, they are coming in and queued up in the order received. So if any of us were to apply now, you're going to end up, way at the end of that line, waiting for at least the first $1 million in donations before your grant would be considered. And who knows?
They can do the traditional global grant process.
Right. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that. Yes, okay. Absolutely. So coalition, that was a term that I actually used when about 12 different times, districts in, districts out, we came together after the International Convention last year with all the information and the awareness that there was 15 million in funding that had been donated in the support of Ukraine. So I'm a big one for, leveraging this program and doing bigger, more impactful grants. And so that's what we did in coming together as a coalition. And there were several pods of those going around. There was some up north, some on the East Coast. There was a lot of districts doing some wonderful work there. So we did about $450,000 worth before the money ran out. Right now, there are 8 districts. You see them, 4 of them are from the Big West. Then we've got Peru, Thailand, a couple from non-Big West, Texas district there, and Thailand that were involved in this $200,000 disaster response grant in Ukraine that is still going on. It was to refurbish a building that had been donated from the government in Ukraine. I've got a couple pictures here. This was the building that was donated. There are actually 5 or 6 of them that were donated to be rehabbed so people could move into that. This is the process that's going on now with our $200,000. They're installing, putting down new conduit piping and installing heaters in those rooms, repairing the windows. You can see all the supplies here. And Ruslan, who's the chief engineer on this project, tells me that they're really hoping that they'll, by the beginning of March, be able to close this grant out. And of course, the significant part is those 8 districts cannot proceed with another disaster response grant until until that grant is closed. So quickly, the takeaways, one of them is just what I just commented on, is that regardless of where you are, whether it's in Ukraine or Turkey or at home in California with a district grant or disaster response grant, a district can only have 1 grant open at a time. So as I just said, for this large $200,000 project that we have going in Ukraine, we want to stay on that. The 5730 is the lead district on that. We want to have them stay on that so we can close that out, that allowing then all those 8 districts to participate in another project should they choose to.
And we have a question from DG Steve Williams. If we process a disaster relief grant for Turkey, what is the best way our districts can support the DRG efforts in Turkey?
Steve, I'm going to save your question till the end because that's really at the heart of some of the things I want to talk about as a group at the end. So if with your permission, I would like to do that. Line number 2 on here, there are funds available in the general disaster response fund for your district to do a DRG if you're not a part of one. So if you were part of the flooding, if your district was part of the any wind damage, if any old fire work that still needs to be done, that there is still money available in the general disaster response fund for your district to put a project together of value of 25,000. You can open that one and close it and do another one. So if domestically, if there is a disaster that you now have identified a project in, I strongly encourage you to do that. And if you need some help with that, I would be glad to support you through that process. I think it's become apparent that doing additional Ukraine projects through the disaster response grant process is going to be a challenge because there's not enough money and there's a lot of projects in front of you if you were to put one in there now. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying keep a close eye on it until we get more money in. Specifically, the funding for Turkey is only for those 3 districts in Turkey. So there's nothing we can do about the policy. There was no change there. Doug, you had a question?
Yes, I did. More of an observation, and that is that with only 3 districts in Turkey and then the floating district, multi-district, and only able to do one $25,000 grant at a time, they're going to be really strapped to make a dent.
Yep, I would completely agree with you. Yeah, good observation.
And from Governor Becky Mosier, was it clarified if we can do a special fund and general fund grant at the same time?
You cannot, Becky. No, just one. Whichever fund you're pulling from, each district can only have one open. That's the policy.
One more from Linda Woodward. If we go into a shelter box opportunity, do we lock ourselves out of other districts' response grant?
No, no. That, and you see opportunity here with Shelter Box. They are doing that. Your district has probably done, or your clubs have probably done some Shelter Box projects in the past. You can make that donation. You cannot direct where your donation goes, but certainly know that in this situation, Shelter Box is responding. And again, if you are interested in reading that full report that they shared with Rotary, since they are partners with us, I'd be happy to share that with you, and then you could make an informed decision on what you would like to do, because it is an opportunity to purchase a Shelter Box and send it there. Okay, I'm going to keep pressing the agenda here. As Howard says, so when we approach the end of calendar year 2022 and the $15 million was exhausted, then several of us started switching to, well, what else is in our toolbox to help support Ukraine, and that was doing a global grant. So we got started on that process, and through our relationships that we'd already built and strengthened in Ukraine and Poland during the latter half of last year, an opportunity came up. One of the cadre members, Cecilia Babkirk, who's in 5170, and myself came up with this idea of putting together, instead of one large, huge global grant project, is doing a grant in a box. And several of you have heard me talk about this already. The concept was, what are some of the barriers to doing a global grant? Is they take too much time. You've got to do the community assessment. You've got to develop your project, figure out where which area of focus you're going to be in, et cetera, et cetera. And for many of you who have personally gone through this process, it takes at least 90 days is the average time to turn around a global grant. And some of the clubs in certainly districts I'm aware of, my own included, it's taken months to get them there. We wanted to lower that bar. So Cecilia and I challenged ourselves, along with support from Lars in the Lviv International Club, who brought the project to us, to design a grant that would be accessible for anybody. And that's what I want to share with you again, and answer any of your questions on this. We've all seen the pictures of the healthcare system that's been destroyed in Ukraine throughout the war. There are emergency field hospitals, but of course they move them far away from the battle for obvious reasons. So the situation there was, you've got a healthcare system that is destroyed, the infrastructure, communications are down, access to clean water is difficult, and the medical staff are trying to provide care in very rudimentary situations. So looking along the red line, this is kind of a low resolution map of Ukraine, but the red line is the war border there. And then we have 3 different oblasts there that we are deploying 30 mobile medical units in there. And that is the grant. And I'll explain that more in just a minute. The first prototype was deployed in December, and it is already seeing, and has been seeing, 100 patients a day. We put this into the field and learned a lot. They requested some changes be made in the other units that were coming out. So this very portable, it can be moved to a safer location if it needs to be. It has its own generators. It has its own heat and cooling system. It's got its own water filtration system. It has its own internet access, et cetera, and has been designed specifically for this purpose. This is the newer version of it based on the feedback from the first unit being in the field. One example is we changed the access ramp here because they were working in 2 or 3 inches of mud and made it very slick. So this is one that can support that. Each unit costs 37,500 US. The total, since we need 30 of them, the total, if you will, project is $1.1 million. But instead of, as you all know, over certain sizes of global grants, they require additional review. So by breaking this into individual units, we gave the opportunity more districts to be involved, to do that, much lower bar, and it's been working really well. The goal is that we would have all 30 of those into the field in the first 6 months of 2023. At this point, our host districts, the districts that are the international districts is really what that slide should say, are listed here on this slide. And the top 2 are the districts themselves are going to be the international sponsors, and the others are the Rotary clubs themselves. The one in the middle, 1440, is in Denmark. And we've made this as easy as we possibly can, and why we're calling it a grant in a box. You go to the store and you buy all your bedding in a bag. Well, this is like a grant in a box kind of a thing. We have built the template, which takes 15 minutes to copy and paste into the grant application. You make absolutely no changes in the language. You provide your club information in the appropriate spots. We provide you with the memorandum of understanding. We have an agreement nationally with the Ministry of Health, and then regionally, which with each of the regional hospitals there. We will get you the host club in Ukraine to do that. All the support documents that you need to support this grant are done. You need to provide the logo. What do you want to put on your unit when it's deployed? Why this is working so well is we vetted this, Cecilia and I vetted this with Destiny, who is the regional grant officer in Ukraine. And so we did all of the back and forth with her questions and what she had, and then incorporated all of those into the grant. So the first one was approved in 15 business days, as opposed to the 90 average. And then the last thing you need to do is identify funding and your 3 contacts for your club or district. So it's really pretty straightforward. And I will just blatantly ask any of you if you would have more interest in this, or think some of your clubs would be interested, or even your district would be interested, please reach out to me. This is a very valuable program. The sustainability piece is these will then be turned into small clinics, dentist offices, et cetera, when at the appropriate time in the future. So any questions about that? This is about the 3rd time I've talked about it.
Leanne, we have a question from Jamie Zinn, and the question is, are you looking to do the same concept for Turkey?
Yes. So Cecilia and I have already talked about it, and that would be my appeal to all of you. Many of you have done grant projects, or you've done exchanges, with Turkey. So we would be looking for a similar project that can be reproduced, meets all of the criteria of a global grant, and it's something that can easily be reproduced, and it doesn't really vary by area or where it's deployed or who the end user is. So absolutely open to your ideas on that, and would really like to hear from you on it, because we've already talked about it. This is the first time in the Rotary world that this has been done. So we're kind of the tip of the spear here trying this, but it's, once people get their head around the concept that it is so easy to do this, it's just really identifying the funding. And then we feed you everything that your club needs. So it's a wonderful opportunity for a club that's never done a global grant before, but wants to do some international work to enter into that arena. So appreciate your time on that.
Leanne, I want to mention that my club is looking at doing this, and I don't know that we would need a partner, but we might need a partner. So if we have a district who's interested in participating with DDF, one of these grants in a box, if they're interested in participating with DDF or another club outside of our district, which is 5230, please let me know.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's what this is about, Shirley, is, partnership, and again, just leveraging all of our pieces to make something work. So thank you for that. The next story here is called, it's a new podcast opportunity called Voices and Stories in Ukraine. And this was actually inspired by Dan Smith, who is a podcaster professionally in District 5110. Dan leaves in a couple of weeks and will be spending a month in Ukraine and Poland. The goals of this are to capture Rotary stories and then share them within the world. This is not a Rotary sponsored project, but we have vetted it with Rotary staff and with some of the Rotary leadership. And in fact, they're going to do a story on this as well. But Dan will be going there to capture your stories. So pretty soon, the district governors will be receiving a letter from us and asking for those stories and that contact information, because this is really about, if we can get those stories and those projects that you did that you're proud of, we want to tell those stories. And that will be how he designs his trip there. So we have a little bit of leniency there. The second mission of this trip is to train 10 displaced Ukrainians, journalists, broadcasters, and provide the equipment for them. And then they will be trained, and they will capture the stories and continue sharing those stories. And they will be paid to do that. So it will provide them with a marketable income for them and their families. And it will be a great assessment tool for all of us. We've already talked about global grant opportunities there. So this is a feet on the ground, great way to get some more information about what's going on in the communities there in Ukraine, and help us identify future projects that are going to be really valuable. Here's the URL for our website, Voices and Stories, and it is UA. That's the abbreviation for Ukraine.com. There's about 5 pages there of all kinds of information. So the call to action on that, I don't think I have another slide. No. The call to action on this, you have an opportunity to be a subscriber for as little as $2.50 a month, up to $50 a month to be a subscriber. So you get those stories. You can also share your stories that you want to see covered by the podcasters. So it's very interactive. And I think probably all of us would agree that we're so much about doing the work in Rotary and helping the communities around the world, that this is going to be a great way to tell the stories of what we're doing and bring more attention to those. And what, I'm a firm believer in, what we bring attention to grows. So this is a great opportunity to do that. So please check it out. We're pretty proud of that. Okay.
We have a few comments, questions.
Thank you, Shirley. Go ahead.
This is from DG Steve Williams. District 2430 has reached out to us for support. It would be good to be able to put together a grant in a box with them to be able to use funds and District DEF to help provide support to them.
Okay.
These are basically some comments of things that people have going on. Howard asked for the global grant in a box. How is the need for Rotary involvement accomplished? I responded back that it is a typical global grant.
It's a typical global grant. So again, the community assessment was through the Ministry of Health for the country of Ukraine, and they were the ones that developed the need in the communities. It was one of the members of the Lviv International Rotary Club in Lviv that has a direct contact with that person, and so that's what started the conversation. And then they actually designed. They had a business design the units. And it kind of went from there. So it was a great partnership. But yeah, this grant in a box is a typical global grant. What's atypical about it is built for you. And you just need to identify the funding sources. And then there we go. Any other comments or questions, Shirley?
Yeah, we have one more. Linda Woodward would like to see the grant in a box. If you would send that to their district, that would be
Sure.
great. And Howard, did we answer your question?
Well, even a global grant requires involvement by Rotary. I guess you're assuming that the design work by the local club would justify Rotary involvement.
Oh, I see what you're saying, active Rotary participation, right, absolutely, because the host clubs there that are set up, excuse me, are going to be actively involved with this, and each of the host clubs are in the area or near the area where the units are being deployed. So it's going to be up to them to keep track of the units, making sure that they are stocked, by all the responsibility for repairs and the stocking of them, because they are gifted to the local hospitals there regionally, that those things are being done. And primarily their responsibility is going to be to track them if they get moved. They very quickly, because really the cost is going to the 37.5. Once the unit is purchased, we've spent all the money. So in terms of a global grant, once the money is spent, you can close it. However, we have made an agreement with Destiny, who's the grant officer, that we will leave them open about a year, because we want to gather some data here to see what happens to those. And, hopefully that the war will come to an end, and they will then be deployed, as I said earlier, just a dental or medical clinic. We'll see what happens there. But you're right, Howard, I wasn't quite understanding your question, but yes, there is active Rotarian participation in this.
Great. And then
one other
Mark,
request from Jim Hogue from District 5400, interested in the grant in a box. I'm sure you'll go through the chat, but I'm sorry, Howard, did I cut you off?
just real quick, you can't end it as soon as you run. You got to have the sustainability. It sounds like your plan for the sustainability, continues on, because you can't just buy something, turn it over and stop.
No, and that, again, that's why this particular project works so well, because they will be converted into neighborhood clinics. A lot of these people have never had access to care, and doing the research for this, and it's written into the body of the grant application. And unfortunately, we have too much experience of civilians in war-torn countries, in Syria and Afghanistan, Iraq, et cetera. And I was assuming going into this that the injuries and the patients showing up would be from the war itself, from being near a bomb blast or something. There's some of that, but at least 75% of the patients who are visiting a unit like this, it's just regular life kinds of things. It's anxiety, it's high blood pressure, it's monitoring their medications, lack of access to medications. It is not war injuries necessarily. I'm sure there are some, but the majority of what they are seeing is just people need access to the care and they don't have it.
We've got a comment from Sam Keevan, and he is saying that we have an outbound Rotary Youth Exchange student in Adana, Turkey. He is safe, but is working with the Adana Rotary locally. A fund has been set up to donate to the Adana Rotary Club through the Students' Home Rotary in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and a fund through the Alpine Bank.
Okay, can you put that into the chat?
It's in the chat, yes.
It is in the chat. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and people are asking for a copy of this recording as well. Imagine they want to share.
Yeah, we'll have a copy of the recording, and if you want the PowerPoint separately, more than happy to do that. So really,
we also have one more, Mark. And I received an email from Victoria Rattle, president of the USA Turkey ICC, who shared apparently Turkish DGs met with Shelterbox, no longer recommend them. Recommend funding to them. Anyone else see this? It says that Shelterbox is not the Shelterbox we used to know. Its content is much more modest, and the process of delivery will take very long.
Oh,
he's asking if others have seen that.
It's the type of email I got, but I don't know to believe or I just wondered if anybody else got this.
Yeah, Mark, can you forward the full email to me, please? Okay, and we're going to talk about things like that. We get into this. I appreciate you queuing me up for that. So action steps to kind of summarize here what's going on. Obviously, I have shelter box listed on there, so I will do some more diligence. Like I say, I just received from Rotary Foundation staff today this email that Shelter Box put out, so I will share that with you. We have global grant opportunity. We have this grant in a box ready to go right now. You can have it, approved in 2 weeks and funded in 2 more weeks, and by a unit to deploy there, if that would be a desire of your district's Rotarians. Share with me any ideas that you have for any place, as a matter of fact, for doing another grant in a box. I mean, we're curious to see if this will help districts re-engage and our clubs re-engage with global grants and have a larger impact. Continue to work with your Rotarians for donations to any of those funds. And if you have at this time of year available DDF, that can certainly be donated to one of the disaster response funds as well. Consider the opportunity to do a disaster response grant application. Just know that there's not any money in there now. And I meet weekly with the staff person to find out how much money is available and what's going on. So if you want to reach out to me, and I can update you with any information if you want to do something there. Non-foundation projects, in Turkey, you're going to get emails about that. I do have a list of the district governor names in Turkey. And so if you would like those, again, to do your own fact finding, I think we do our own, as Mark already said, let's do our diligence, let's find out, let's share things with each other to make sure that if we're going to donate some money, become involved in something, it's going to get to the people we want it to go to. Many of you know Habir from 5170, who's been very active in Ukraine. She is leaving soon to go back there, and she's going through Turkey. And she will be checking there. In our meeting yesterday, she was talking about how we really need to be careful which NGOs that we might be working with in Turkey and what's going on there. So I think we do need to proceed with caution and trying to help the civilians there that have been impacted by this. And then I shared briefly with you the opportunity to share your projects, your stories, and subscribe to that to continue to support Ukrainians. And get your Rotary stories out. So I encourage you to look at that. Okay, so I want to leave the rest of the time. We've got about 20 minutes here to go back to what Steve was asking, some of what Mark was talking about. Several of the others may have been thinking is, how do our districts in the Big West, there are 30 of us, how do we leverage our skills, our passion, our money, our project ideas to support not only Ukraine, Turkey, Syria, Pakistan during times of disaster, but how do we just, what ideas do you have to go forward and to really leverage our impact when these opportunities come up? Do we want to, Vicki has asked me early on to be the disaster response grant specialist. We just on an as needed basis, I have been holding meetings. We can do that more regularly. We can set up a newsletter. I'm really opening it up for you, what you want to do, so we can share ideas and information, because there's been a lot of, your districts have done a lot of great work, and I would love to hear, what you're doing and what you're planning on doing now, Turkey, Ukraine, et cetera. So I'm going to, I'm pretty sure, yeah, that's my last slide. So I'm going to stop this and we'll bring you all back in and just kind of open it up for discussion. What are you doing? What ideas do you have? How can we continue to be involved? Becky?
Yeah, sorry, I just had a quick question about something that you said, and maybe I misunderstood. But I thought the way that they did with Ukraine, they had opened up the districts in Turkey to be able to ask for more than 25K, or is that wrong?
That's incorrect. As
Okay. I thought that I read that it was 125K, but that's
that
what they
the
set
120
aside for them.
that was the set aside out of the general fund just for Turkey to get that started. You're correct.
Okay. I think we're all struggling with Turkey. You know, a lot of us have connections and we have some members in our district that are from there, and you know, we're just trying to figure out how we can do something that will be helpful. And I don't think we figured that out yet.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? We're not even 2 weeks out yet. It was on the 6th, right? So just 10 days out from this, and things are obviously still very fluid and what's coming out of there. Yeah, with the government the way it is, and the trustees elected to not have all of us be involved like we are able to do in Ukraine, that it's just the 3 districts in Turkey that are able to do the work. So that leaves global grant opportunities for us. And I would have no idea, quite frankly, what that would be at this time, since things are, you know, they're still in recovery mode and not into, you know, building going forward. So the timing of that would be important. But we're going to ask the questions, because several, you're right, Becky, several of us have contacts there.
I think that's the most important thing at this point, is ask and listen. Listen to what they're telling us that they need. You know, it's easy for us to sit here and say, we need to do this, we need to do that. We don't know what we need to do at this point. We have to wait and see what they tell us they need.
Exactly. And I think, Linda, what we can do to act on that, if we want to do something now, is to donate. I mean, you can donate your district's DDF, and you can encourage your members to donate. And then as these things queue up, we have a much better picture of what the needs are, and they are responding back to us. This is what we need. Then there's money available for them to do that.
My
And
district
there's
is doing that very well.
I'm sorry, Leanne, there's a president of the Morro Bay Rotary Club in District 5240, and he is from Turkey, and they are raising funds for Turkey. I'll get his name and number and contact and send that to you in case anyone wants to contact him.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Leanne,
Mark,
Jim Hope
you have your
from-
hand up.
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry, Jim, I'll come back to
That's
you.
okay.
Mark has his hand up.
Either way, the same email I mentioned about shelter box references the Morro Bay district that you just mentioned too. So they're apparently connected on providing funding into Turkey. I'm a new district disaster relief committee chair, and really just struggling to figure out all these terms and all that means. You asked what we're planning to do. We're, you know, we have our district, and I don't know how all the structures are the same everywhere, but 5280, it has a charitable foundation that we're going to ask members in our district to give to without quite yet knowing how that money is going to go, where it's going to go in Turkey. I think that we're looking at if we could give it directly to those districts there, or clubs. Is that what, am I understanding that we can or we cannot do that?
Well, if the receiving club in Turkey has, you know, a method of doing that, then sure, you could do that.
That's a separate process from the disaster grants.
Completely separate, right?
Thank you.
You know, going through the disaster response grant, you know, whether it's important or not depends on the donor. That goes towards their Paul Harris account, any money that they would donate. Same for the district, that DDF. And so if that's important and means bigger donations, they may want to do that instead of going through a 501c3 or some other donating, you know, mechanism to get it there. And then again, for all of us, and you all know this anyway, I'm just encouraging you to really do, you know, any grant that we do, anytime it's a transactional thing, is make sure you have a relationship with the partner, the receiving partner on the other end, so that money gets there and is used the way you wish it to be. Jim.
Yes, you know, and I've talked to you about this before, but I thought I'd express this again. With our disaster grant, you know, I've been able to find another $10,000 to add to the 25,000.
Oh, you're up to 10 now? Wow.
Yes. So, but the bad news is that's going to be just a contribution to the NGO that we're working with in Ukraine. Or it's actually England. But anyway, you know, I don't know whether there's some way we could get some feedback to the trustees that, is there some way that we can make that happen to where now we can go through the foundation like we would with a global grant, we could add money to that fund. This way, that's currently prohibited. Rotarians will join things when they know what is happening. To say, okay, we want to help Turkey, which I think is a wonderful thing, and I think we all agree with that. But sometimes if you can understand what it is, then you're more inclined to give. And so if it can be part of Rotary, I think that helps us out. And I like I say, I've been able to, cobble together 10,000 out of my own club, but I would be happy to go to other clubs if I could say, hey, this is going to count towards your next Paul Harris or whatever. So I don't know whether you can help in that facilitate that.
Well, I will certainly, pass that on. And Larry Lunsford had mentioned it on one of the calls we were on in the last couple of weeks, is following their January trustee meeting, there was a subcommittee put together to really look at, take a hard look at the disaster response fund and how, they've structured that up to this point, and to then do a report out of their findings at their next meeting in April. So I had asked, I said, well, are they getting any input from Rotarians? Because I would certainly have some thoughts I would like to share, and staff was not aware that was going to happen. But I agree with you. And I, completely is, what does Jennifer Jones say? It's about telling the story. So if you are asking somebody for money and you can tell them, it's doing a school, it's doing an orphanage, it's, refurbing a building for someone to live in, it's providing clothing, that's a much stronger ask than just into, we want to send it to Turkey or we want to send it to Ukraine, and you have no idea, where it's going. So I would completely agree with that. Marge, hi, good evening. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I joined late. I didn't realize the conference was going on. So sorry if you've already covered this, but I'm very curious about the second thoughts, I guess, is being given to the shelter box, because we are going to, we're putting something in our weekly newsletter that comes out on the weekend, promoting relief for Turkey, and also promoting shelter box as a possibility for donations. So I'm concerned about that. Is there some problem with shelter box? Is there something?
Yeah, Mark's got this email. So, I will commit to all of you. He's going to share that with me. And then first thing in the morning, I will be calling in to Rotary and talking with the staff person there, sharing that email and getting an answer back to you. And then I will send that out. Because
there's a possibility that email is, I just wonder if it was going around, because it almost looks like they're saying, don't give to shelter box, give to our thing. And so there may be that dynamic here. That's why I wanted to verify that it can be really confusing.
Right. And I think, asking questions, doing that due diligence is absolutely spot on. Yeah. Joe, you had a comment?
Yes, one of the officers for shelter boxes in our district, Bill Tobin, and I've heard nothing negative about it. And he's gathering funds here to send over there now.
Okay, good. Well,
we have a question from Sam Keevan, just to confirm, do our contributions to one of the RI disaster relief funds count toward our Paul Harris Fellow designation?
You're correct. Yes.
And then just to follow up on that, something you said earlier, Leanna, you mentioned that we could donate our district's DDF.
Correct.
And how does that all structure together? I don't know what that all necessarily means.
So the district designated funds that comes back to each district each year for our district grants and our global grants, that most districts have a balance, so we could use it for polio or Peace Fellows, et cetera. You can gift that DDF to another district.
Got it.
And in this case, you could push it to one of the districts to their disasters response fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, a lot of moving parts, huh, Mark? Tom, hi, how are you this evening?
Good. So, Leon, we do have DDF in our global account. We've exhausted our DDF in our district funds. Can we transfer the DDF from a global account into the disaster relief fund for Turkey?
Yeah, my answer is yes. I haven't heard a distinction that you could not.
Okay. I don't believe we can take it from our district DDF and take it to that fund directly if we had any. But my understanding is we can from the global fund then.
Mhm, mhm. Yes,
right.
correct. So other questions, comments? Marge, is your hands up the second time?
Yeah,
Okay.
another question. You mentioned the grant in a box, the medical.
Medical emergency unit? Mhm.
And that they're available for Turkey as well.
We hope that they will be available. We've got to work those logistics out. Have not had that conversation yet, but what I was alluding to is if any of you through your contacts, if we can come up with the same concept of a grant in a box where my team can just build that, all the components of a global grant, and then just hand those out like cards, like from a deck of cards to any district or any club that wants to participate, I would be more than anxious to hear about that idea and see what we could work up from that. And we will be looking for ideas as well. So I need to see if we can, no, it's not in place for the mobile medical unit. I've got to see, at my next meeting, which may be tomorrow, when we can get those there and how we would get those there, because those are ready to go.
Okay, you'll keep us posted, right?
Absolutely. And how do you want me to do that? Because you are getting so many emails. How do you want me to do that?
I think emails is, I know we're getting a lot, but
yeah,
I don't think you want to go to try to text message everybody's.
Yeah, no, I communication and information could be so powerful, and we all run into a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding of things. We, like Mark, you come up with, hey, I've heard about this, so please, anything like that, shove it to me. Director Vicky does the same thing as things come up, and then we will get those things vetted in a very short period of time. So if you have any questions, please let me know. We've got about 5 minutes left. Several of you may have, Becky shared it with me earlier because I hadn't received a copy of it directly, that on the 18th, District Governor Vitali in Ukraine and immediate past District Governor in Ukraine, Mykola, are doing a Zoom call, and they're really going to be talking about the projects that have gone on there. I meet with them probably every couple of weeks. Wonderful gentlemen, and if you read the last Rotary magazine, their names appeared in that. They have been extremely active in service to the people impacted by, and their Rotary clubs, the people impacted by the war. So they're very inspiring individuals. What Mykola has done in Ukraine is at the district level, which is 2232, they have set up a disaster response committee. And so now, for example, with Jim 5400's disaster response grant that has been approved and gone through, all of the money that is going to a club in Ukraine for a disaster response grant goes through that district committee. They have added another layer just to make sure that the district leadership knows what's going on with the disaster response grants in that country. And he is at the center of that. But he has assured me that it's a very quick turnaround time, and it's not going to slow the process down. So I would encourage you, if you can. I didn't do the math, what time they're 9 or 10 hours ahead of us there as to what time.
It's 1 a.m.
1 a.m. Okay.
and it's 4 hours long.
Wow. Okay. Lots to talk about and celebrate. And he will be meeting, I mentioned Dan Smith and the Ukraine Voices and Stories. He will be meeting with Dan Smith when he is there, as well as I believe he still has space in his schedule. The District Governor Piotr in Poland has also been on our calls, although I know he's going to Wisconsin to their district conference there. So he may be out of the state. And then Vitali is coming here beginning of the summer, I think. So we may have an opportunity to meet him face to face. That would be great. So that's coming up. If you're a night person, I'm sure there will be a recording of that.
Yeah, Leanne, that's, but
Yes,
mountain
Jim.
time, that's actually 6 o'clock in the morning. So it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon there. So I think it's 9 hours difference.
Yeah, that sounds a little more feasible, doesn't it?
For Hawaii, it's 12 hours. So
It's
anyway,
bad,
it's okay.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, lots of information. I know your dinner is waiting as well. So I will get this recording, out to you. I'm not sure, Shirley, if we'll be able to post it on the zone website or not. I know they're pretty guarded about that stuff, but
There's nothing wrong with asking, so
there's nothing wrong with that.
I think that this is at the top of everyone's hearts and minds, so.
Yeah. You and I do that well, we can ask, but in the meantime, I will get it out to you. I'll capture anything that you put into me in the chat box. And several of you asked about that grant in a box, so I will get that out to you. And I will work on the shelter box thing first thing in the morning for all of you, and then get that out.
Oh.
We did it.
Yeah. Thank you for all you do for us, Leanne.
Yeah.
You're an angel. You really are. Thank you.
Well, bless your heart. This is a big team effort. I say I'm the conduit. I'm just the connector, bringing all you wonderful people together so we can really do some awesome stuff. So let's keep doing that. All right.
Okay.
All right. Great to see all of you. Thank you. Good night.